Greetings, Imagination Connoisseurs. Welcome to this, the first live broadcast from the Burnettwork. I'm your host, Robert Meyer Burnett, and this is a Robservations live chat. And I figured for this first live chat, I would discuss. Basically, I'm always talking about how we live in a golden age. If you were a geek, a geek. I call it the Post-Geek Singularity. That's what I think that I would call this. We live in a geek golden age. Everything we could possibly want is here. And as an example, I wanted to start talking about stories. That's what we all love, isn't it? Well, greetings, Imagination Connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of science fiction and cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your pharaoh of physical media, and lest we forget, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett. And once again, for the 576th time, I am Robcasting at you Imagination Connoisseurs from the, well, I haven't done this for 576 times, but we are coming to you from the Robservatory, where you can see my mind writ large for all to see behind me and around me, surrounding me. It binds us. I won't go there. But you know what I'm saying. It is the 576th episode of Robservations. I just showed you a clip from the very first episode of this show. That was 2 years ago today. Amazingly enough, December 15th, 2018. I can't believe that I've done this show for this long. To be honest, I didn't know what this show was supposed to be. The first person that really told me that I should do a YouTube show of my own was John Schnepp. And John Schnepp, the late, great John Schnepp, brought me into the YouTube space in April of 2015 when he asked me to come on to the 6th episode of what was at the time AMC Heroes. And on that first show, I was a guest along with, well, John Campea, who I had never met, and John Schnepp hosted the show, and they graciously had me on. And it went well. I vibed with them. We had a good vibe together, and I kept doing the show. I became a semi-regular, then a regular, and I did hundreds of episodes of that show. And I was lucky to work with a lot of really interesting people in the YouTube space. I wound up working with Coy Jandreau and Amy Dallin and John and then John Campea left and started his own thing. And now I find myself over there after the untimely passing of John Schnepp. And it was John Schnepp who first said, you have a unique way of looking at this genre space. You should do your own show. I was unconvinced of that. I at first, for those of you who have been with me since the beginning, people like Stubble McShave. Stubble McShave watched that first broadcast, and Stubble is still here all the way from Sweden. And it was a very embryonic kind of a thing. I figured I wanted it to be a little bit more highfalutin. For those of you who remember, the first real episode of Robservations was not the live chat. It was actually, it was called Middle Age Cosplay, and I went to see Greg Smith, our sometime moderator now, because he's working and things like that. But Greg Smith, one of my oldest, dearest friends, I went to see him in Olympia. Elizabeth and I did in the summer of the summer of 2018. We went to Seafair, and we went and saw him in Olympia and filmed his cosplay stuff that he had done for the 501st and other Star Wars groups he was a member of, and he built a 1-to-1 scale land speeder with that group. And that was the first show, and that was actually in November of 2018. And that's what I thought the show was going to be. I thought it was going to be basically what I was doing for DVD special editions, but I was going to do it for fandom and talk about what fans love, fan concerns. I wanted to do a lot more sort of interviews and documentary stuff. The problem is that that's very labor intensive. And it took me a long time to finish that middle-aged cosplay show. And I would never get anywhere on YouTube doing that. And, it was Elizabeth who also encouraged me. She gave me an early Christmas present. She gave me this microphone that I'm still using to this day. I have not upgraded to like a Shure microphone or a different kind of microphone. I've stayed on this one, the Yeti that she got me, maybe out of sentimental value. But, the only reason I'm still doing this show is really because of you. You imagination connoisseurs who decided you were imagination connoisseurs, and everybody that has supported this channel in many different ways. Again, I didn't know what it was going to be. Like you could see, today I'll talk about my favorite movies, and I didn't settle into some kind of a format. I guess my format is talk about some issues of the day that are not necessarily news. Everyone else talks about news. Like I could address, hey, all the reviews for Wonder Woman 84 dropped today. They're fairly good. People say it's a little overstuffed, a little too much plot going on, but I saw a scene early on in the film. They showed it at the Wonder Woman premiere event online as part of DC Fandom, where you're on the island of Themyscira, and it looked great, and it looks beautifully done. And I actually watching the Amazonians. I guess they were showing their prowess, and it was a great scene. I was into it, and then it ended. I was bummed out. So it captured my imagination. So I'm really excited to see that. But I don't need to report on that. Sometimes I'll review things, whether it's Star Trek Discovery. The reviews for The Stand dropped. Very disappointing. And I had known that they were going to use a flashback structure. And look, I understand that there are things that happen in network television that become fashionable. One of those things Look, Quentin Tarantino does a really good job jumping through time, telling a non-linear story, going back and forth. He did that very well in Kill Bill and Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. But in television, in my mind, it's sort of become a crutch. And it isn't a tell-all, or it doesn't work for everything. And one of the things that I really loved about Stephen King's The Stand, which is one of my favorite books, is that it was a journey. Much like, as he said, it was an American Lord of the Rings, in the sense that you have a fellowship that ends up traveling to essentially Mordor, Las Vegas. But part of what was so interesting about The Stand was this linear journey that these characters were on. And meeting them, now I haven't seen the show, I've just read the reviews, and meeting them when all of this has already happened, part of the fascination for me when I first read the book was King's depiction of the fall of civilization. And I think going back and forth, what you're doing is you're withholding information and then doling it out. And I understand what you're doing. It's like you're dangling a carrot in front of a donkey. And I get it. I get that's an interesting way of doing something. But the problem with that is I think it's fundamentally different, unless you're somebody like Quentin Tarantino. When you're adapting a book and you're changing the structure of that book, I guess for people who haven't read the book, maybe it'll work, but all the reviews have basically said the same thing, that the flashback structure doesn't work. But, again, I'm going to reserve judgment till I watch it, but it was what I feared when I heard that they were going to go in that direction, because that's basically what Manifest does. Pick your TV show. Ever since Lost, everybody's done it that way. And I just feel that I think there's something to be said to move back into maybe a linear form of storytelling, because the flashback structure is kind of a cheat. It's become formulaic now, and to see it applied to something like The Stand, to see a network formula applied to a miniseries where the whole point of the story is the actual forward momentum of the journey and the stops along the way. And I think that for those people who know the story like I do, I don't need that structure. What I'm looking for is an adaptation of the book. And I think that one of the great strengths of Mick Garris's adaptation of The Stand was the first 2 hours. But be that as it may, I could go off on a tangent. What I think has been the most interesting thing about doing this show for 2 years is this community. You guys and girls and gentle beings and however you identify across these 28 known galaxies. That was unexpected for me. I didn't know when I started calling everybody the Post-Geek Singularity, that was just a term. It was just something I made up in my mind to describe, rather than call people nerds or geeks. I figured I'd come up with something a little bit more highfalutin and something that was a little bit more descriptive and fun to say, instead of, the idea, geeks and nerds have a connotation that isn't necessarily the greatest in the world. I don't mind being called a geek or a nerd. I was never one of these people that said, I'm not a Trekkie, I'm a Trekker. But it seems now in this day and age, every time I tried to watch seconds of The Big Bang Theory, I'm like, really? Really? America's still embracing this stereotype? I never thought I was, and most of the people I knew that I met early on in California, we were never those stereotypical nerds. That's why Mark and I made Free Enterprise, because we had a different experience of it all. So one of the things that I wanted to do with this show was talk about our nerdy pursuits in not such a nerdy way, because everybody's sort of moved into this space now. But I was really interested in building this. I didn't know what it was to start out with, and it sort of evolved and it's grown. And I can't tell you, like, every day, like I was going through, there's a lot of obviously movies for the film festival I'm getting through, because I have to do a lot of work with them before I put them online. And I've been really surprised at the quality of stuff. I thought 2 films we dropped today, and there's going to be more films later on today, by the way. I thought that they were, they've just been getting better and better and better. And also because, people have taken time. They've taken the full 2.5 months. So I'm sure there was a curve, and it's been really interesting to see. But now we're going to have the short story contest launching. And I feel this community that we've been building is exactly the kind of community I wished I was a part of growing up as a fledgling imagination connoisseur, because I didn't have that. And look, it's not that, like, as I've said before, I'm just the guy throwing the party. A party is made or broken based on who shows up and what they do when they get there. And so I think that what I've done is I just threw a little bit of a party. And luckily, a lot of you like-minded folks decided to show up and keep showing up. And you obviously haven't outstayed your welcome yet, and you're not sick of me as a host. So all of that it's very heartening, especially in the last year that we've had. I mean, the thing that's kept me sane is every day I get up and I think, okay, well, what is it I'm going to do on the show? John Campy's show, what are we going to do? But on this show, I try and think about, okay, what am I going to talk about? And I look for subjects, and I look for things that not everyone necessarily is talking about, where I can opine and bring more of my experience in the industry and things like that. So it's been I won't say it's been a long, strange trip, but it's been a good trip, certainly. And I feel like I've made friends. Dieter Bastian, a guy I didn't know at the beginning of this year, I think I contacted him, or he contacted me or something. We contacted each other. I wanted to get the Rollerball 4K Blu-ray, the original Rollerball that was coming out in Germany. And now we're doing a show together. I didn't really, doing this and increasing my audience, I did not know people like The Critical Drinker. I just watched his great videos. We did a show together, a 4.5-hour show on Star Trek The Motion Picture. And what was so great to work with him, a very smart guy, but he's not from my peeps that love Star Trek The Motion Picture. He watched it, and he had a very great objective take on the whole thing, which is something that I think made our conversation more interesting. He wasn't like, he didn't slavishly devote himself to a love of Star Trek The Motion Picture, and that was fine. I was on Jeremy's channel, Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers, where everybody got mad at me for going on Jeremy's channel, and I think we had an incredible talk. He invited me to come over there, and we had a really nice conversation, and I, again, respect him. We might be very different politically, but we're all fans, and he certainly showed me respect, which is something I was not afforded from the people that I worked with for a long time this year. That was interesting, too. It's interesting that over the last 5 years, the troubles, or let's not call them troubles, let's call them bumps in the road that I've had, came with people that I had been working with, which was strange to me. I'm like, do you not watch the show? But they don't, which is fine. but it was really interesting to feel the rocks from slings and be hit with arrows from people that I thought knew me a little better, but didn't. That was interesting too. Definitely a lesson learned there. Sometimes my darkly sardonic sense of humor or whatever is lost on people because that's all they see, and you have to be careful navigating these currents and the eddies of social media. So that's been fun. But luckily, you guys have stuck around. You guys, girls, gentle beings, however you identify, you've stuck around. And I've heard from a lot of different people that identify as very many things. And they have all told me, I think the greatest thing that this channel has brought for me is that there are people of all persuasions, of all types, that have said that they can come to this channel and they feel like it's a place where they belong. And there is no higher compliment to me than that. Because, as I said, I believe that human beings are one race. We are the human race. And in all of our myriad subsets of humanity, I genuinely do like almost everyone. And I'm glad to hear that people, no matter what color you are, no matter where your sexuality is coming from, your religion, whatever, I'm glad to see that a lot of people feel that there's a place where they can come and hang out and fly their freak flag if they want. Or, I've tried to do it. It's tough, man. I got to say, it is not easy navigating the waters of our social media age. I mean, there have been times when, I've talked to people via DMs, or I've received lots of emails where people don't want me to share them live, where I've talked to a lot of different people. Some people I've learned a lot from people. There are things that I've said, I try and be sensitive. There's things I've said that I don't even know were insensitive. But again, I don't have a problem being corrected. And why would I? That's kind of what I say, is that we're supposed to support one another. So basically, after 2 years of this show, don't worry, this is not my retirement show. I basically just wanted to take a break and say, at least for a couple minutes, to acknowledge the last 2 years and to acknowledge all the people that watch this show, and just to say a profound thank you. And the participation that I've received, people that have sent me artwork. Mike Bodden is sending me a box of stuff. He said it's 45 pounds. He hasn't sent me anything all year. Whatever you have sent, any of you who've sent me things to the post office box, I'm getting all of that. I might have it by Friday. We are going to have another unboxing video. I mean, I've received amazing stickers. Joseph did a great drawing of me as Captain Picard, or in a Next Generation captain suit. I mean, opening these treasures, wondrous treasures that all of you have sent me has been amazing. It'll be fun to do it again. And I think I might have a box from Dieter Bastian to open. And then, of course, tomorrow we have a new show. I've talked about it before. The new show is fully articulated, and we're going to do things like toy unboxings, or maybe I'll do some interviews on that show. Elizabeth will open and play with my action figures and watch me cringe. But the first episode that we're doing, I'm doing it once again with Heel versus Babyface, who I've been doing with the Prisoner shows. And again, I didn't know him. We met as a result of Midnight's Edge, and we started talking, and we realized that we'd certainly park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay in certain respects. Certain things we're definitely far apart on, but there's one thing that we share, and that's our love of action figures and miniatures and model kits. And tomorrow, last week was one of the geekiest streams I ever did, where we were just talking action figures the whole time. And I do have my Hot Toys Hulkbuster that's never been opened, so I will open that on the show. I have a Jazz Inc. diorama that I have never opened, and I figure I'll open that on the show and just do what we did last week. We're going to host it on my channel tomorrow, but it's certainly going to be a wacky, fun time. And we'll be doing more of that. Elizabeth and I are going to start our The Heart of Trek is called. Our show, The Heart of Trek, A Couple's Guide to the Final Frontier. We're going to start that show, and we're going to do more, of course, whining about movies. I mean, who would have ever thought? So, yeah. And the short story competition, the film festival competition. By the way, tonight is the last night to get in your films for the film festival, assuming you already filled out a form and paid the entry fee. So we have to make a Dropbox for you. I'm sure I've got all those films. And in the next, be aware, look at your email, because what I would like to do for all of you semifinalists, I'd like to contact you personally and set up some kind of a Skype call. It doesn't have to be long, maybe a half an hour, where I'd like to talk to you about your movies and how they were made and problems you might have, things you learned. And that's for the Christmas Day show, where all the semifinalists are going to be announced. And it's going to be a long show, probably like it's going to be pre-recorded. So, I mean, if you want to send me tips during that, that's fine too. But it's going to be a pre-recorded show. I will leave, I probably won't have live chat on because I don't expect my moderators to work on Christmas Day. But it will be a show you can tune into, and it'll have all the semifinalist films will be playing along, hopefully with as many filmmakers as I can get to talk about their movies and the creation of their films. And then, of course, we're going to announce, I don't know how long my judges actually are going to take to judge, so it might not be New Year's Day where we're going to have the live show, the Whining About Movies live show, where we present the awards. But there are 11 awards that are going to be given out, and of course, actually, 11 awards, and there's the biggest award of the festival, not the best of the festival, but the biggest award of the festival is the Imagination Connoisseurs, the award that it's the Singularity Award is the most imaginative film. That's kind of like our Palme d'Or. And then there are other films. There's best film. Now, the best film is not the most imaginative. It's different. The overall, because the idea is to be an imagination connoisseur, so the most imaginative film is our top award. And I call it our best film. I think our best overall film, maybe our most accomplished film technically, because I didn't want to. There's all levels of filmmaking skill, but there's not all levels of imagination. And the best film of the festival isn't necessarily the most imaginative. The best film is, in my mind, from a technical standpoint, from an overall standpoint, that's our best film. That's the film that we say the best film is like, this is the slickest, this is the most professional. I would like it. It's possible for the best film to also win most imaginative, but that's not necessarily the case, and that's something. And also, we have awards. People have sponsored awards. Beecher's Handmade Cheese, thanks to Kaz Graphics, the cheesemonger of the channel. They have sponsored an award, so there is, in fact, cash prizes for all the awards, and there's trophies as well, and we're having those made. So that's pretty exciting. And then we will move into both the short story contest and the book cover design contest, which it doesn't cost anything to enter the book cover design contest like the poster contest. Unfortunately, we do have to charge for an entry fee for the short story competition because people have to read them. That's work. So I can't expect people to read a bunch of short stories for free. So I'm not going to do that. But anyway, it's going to be fun. And the next year, we got a lot of stuff planned. And I think, well, hell, I'll just announce it. We're not going to make the film festival annual. We're going to do the film festival again, and we're going to do it next year as well. So we're going to do 2 a year. And the next film festival the due date for the second Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival is, in fact, July 7th. Why July 7th, you might ask? That was my dad's birthday. He hasn't been here for a while, but he would have loved the fact that we were throwing a film festival. So July 7th is the due date. And my dad's name was Richard Burnett, and everyone called him Dick. So in honor of Dick, the film festival deadline is July 7th. And that will be the second biannual Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. So you have a lot more time. Get to work. I look forward to seeing what you guys are going to do. Anyway, let's get into the show. Enough about that. I do have something I wanted to read, as you might imagine. It is an article today that dropped It dropped in the Hollywood Reporter today. Warner Brothers under siege. No one is angry at the streamers. It's these guys. Ooh, boy. Warner Media's production partners are eyeing court battles over its day and date HBO Max plan, and top talent like Denzel Washington aren't pleased by woefully inadequate overtures. In the aftermath of Warner Media's decision to put its entire 2021 slate of films on its HBO Max streaming service the same day the titles open in theaters, the AT&T division seems to recognize the need for damage control, but not quite how to go about it. As Hollywood has revolted publicly against the plan, Warner Media CEO Jason Kilar is making rounds of brief calls to the company's various creative partners, assuring them breezily that everything will be smoothed over before ringing off. And the offers that follow, one producer involved in the mess tells the Hollywood Reporter that what's been proposed so far is woefully inadequate and adds insult to injury. An agency source references Kilar's December 13th comment in the New York Times that Warner Media is approaching the situation with a guiding principle of generosity and offers this response: "You don't know the definition of generous, dude." That was an agency source. Part of the problem is that Kilar appears to talk out of both sides of his mouth. Warner's threw the entire 2021 slate of movies on HBO Max day and date, the company says, because it had concluded that people wouldn't be returning to theaters by the end of the year. This was even as the nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, was saying things that could be better much sooner than that, and as the world is witnessing planes delivering loads of coronavirus vaccines. There are those who argue that people will still be reluctant to go to theaters by the end of the year, and those who believe people will be very eager to get out of their houses and experience movies on the big screen. But since no one knows for sure, it seems disingenuous to use the pandemic to explain making such a sweeping move for a full year. While Warner's has been telling filmmakers that the move will apply only to 2021 movies, Kilar simultaneously says things like, at a certain point, you do need to lead. Where is he leading? Is the studio's destination really consistent with a temporary shift in strategy necessitated by the pandemic? Those who come from the digital world believe the revolution is here and that every movie will stream day and date. They cheerfully dismiss industry players like Christopher Nolan, who say the Warner's move will destroy the business model that supports film, as Luddites who are resisting the streaming future. But throughout industry history, other outsiders also had a dangerous tendency to imagine that Hollywood insiders are stupid, and it usually ends badly for them. Filmmakers and stars understand there's a pandemic to consider and a digital shift in the works. They know that streaming day and date or going without a theatrical release altogether will be a routine for many movies going forward. They know the exclusive weeks-long theatrical window is unsustainable. None of us are horse and buggy people, says an exec involved in the battle. We go across all platforms when everyone is in agreement and upfront about it. No one is angry at the streamers. It's these guys. Consider the case of Denzel Washington, whom New York Times critics A.O. Scott and Manohla Dargis just named the greatest actor of the 21st century so far. Most likely, making him very angry was not such a good idea. But sources say that's what happened as his new detective film, The Little Things, becomes the first one down the Warner Media chute. Like everyone involved with the 2021 slate, Washington was blindsided by the decision to stream day and date. Given the pandemic, sources say he might have been amenable to the move if it had been done transparently the way Warner's had handled Wonder Woman 84. Many artists would say, as long as we have a fair negotiation, I'm fine, says a source involved in the situation. So Warner's could at least partially solve the problem with money, though it hasn't yet. But even if a Little Things deal is made, that doesn't address the filmmakers' unhappiness at being blindsided, nor their concern that the movie is supposed to debut January 29th, and Warner's, having dismissed veteran Blair Rich, has a leaderless marketing department. Industry insiders note with concern that Warner seems to be purging just about every exec with ties to the studio's formerly talent-friendly culture, which will have long-term impact that seems inconsistent with a strategic shift necessitated by the pandemic. The studio has hired marketing exec Josh Goldstein to consult on Little Things and is rumored to be close to hiring a veteran marketing executive to work across all platforms, which might help the company figure things out. More trouble looms with respect to James Wan's upcoming horror movie Malignant. A knowledgeable source says that Wan, as a producer and director, has an extraordinarily rich deal. 13% of first dollar gross. God, I love James Wan, and he's a nice guy too. As a producer and director, has an extraordinarily rich deal. 13% of first dollar gross. You go, James Wan. Can you imagine 13% of that $1 billion you made for Aquaman? That is some cheddar, son. So he could hardly have been pleased when Warner's decided to wipe out the exclusive theatrical window. The same source says the $60 million film was fully financed by Chinese company Starlight Media, which owns all rights. Warner's unilateral decision to put the film day and date on its... Okay, this is really important. So, the Warner Brothers is releasing James Wan's movie, Malignant. The reason that James Wan's dealing with Warner Brothers is because James Wan has had a very good relationship with them, with the Conjuring franchise and with Aquaman. James Wan is a filmmaker that is clearly respected by the studio. Somehow, or he brought in a Chinese company to finance the movie. I am sure part of the reason that Starlight Media, the Chinese company, was willing to finance the entire $60 million price tag of the movie was that Warner Brothers was going to release it globally, theatrically. So they were assured, based on James Wan's past performance, especially with the studio, how much money they were going to make, that they'll get their money back. So now, it's not James Wan's fault, but when HBO Max and Warner Brothers make this decision, when AT&T and the people running the streaming division at Warner Brothers, controlling HBO Max, made this unilateral decision, they put James Wan in a really bad position with the people that financed his movie. Because, we were expecting... This is why what they've done is problematic for the people that make the movies. Because now, Warner Brothers... The reason that James Wan went to Warner Brothers in the first place, he had a deal there, obviously. He's been working with them. He expected that the studio would do right by him. Now, his 13% choice, but also what does he say to these financiers, this Chinese financiers that, he probably brought in himself or found somebody who did or his company did or something, and he brings these people in. Basically what Warner's did was fuck him. I mean, they really did. And I'm being overly simplistic about it, but this is problematic. So you have a company, $60 million is not chump change. And when you go and you get forget the fact that they're Chinese. Any financier that's going to put up $60 million for your film based on the fact that you're releasing it through Warner Brothers, well, what they did was Warner Brothers took all of that incentive away. If they wanted to put it on a streamer day and date with theatrical, they would have done just that. But the whole point was Warner Brothers' marketing division and their global reach, that movie could have made $500 million. I would imagine that was probably the projections that they were hoping for. And then everybody comes out right. Everybody's made nice living off that movie. And this is the real problem. Everybody thinks, the talent, just because you work in Hollywood and you make a lot of money on a film, you might not work for years after that. Now, hopefully you don't. Hopefully you get to work. But movies take 2 years. That's in a best case scenario. Or unless you're Woody Allen, you make a movie a year. But you're looking at 2 years where whatever you're getting paid, that's what you get for 2 years, unless you have other concerns. And you move into those higher tax brackets, you're not taking home as much money as people might think. So, and it ain't show friends, it's show business. And these are people that expected to do good business. And these AT&T executives, let's face it, Warner Brothers used to be owned by a shoe company. And when these executives come in, running a telecom business is a very different business than running a business where you're dealing with talented artists and basically a bunch of crazy people that are making the very product you want to be there to feed your infrastructure. So AT&T, this was a massive blunder, because the idea that they're going to be able to create the fact that people think that, or they don't value creative talent in the movie industry. It's really, really, really hard to make good movies. And when you have people that have delivered consistently great product time and time again, those are the last people that you want to piss off. They're the last people that you want to piss off. Now, I understand the world is rapidly changing. And I do think, I've always thought that streaming is the future. And I've always thought that it's just, we've seen it happen. The world changes, you know. That doesn't mean movie theaters are going to go away, but movie theater chains will. I mean, make no mistake. Do you think people who can sit home and watch Wonder Woman 84 the night it debuts would rather go out? You think a family who has, you know, kids that want to see a Wonder Woman movie, do you think that family that's going to end up paying $100 or even more to go out for dinner and go to a movie and buy all the refreshments and all that, you think that they won't take the opportunity to stay home? Of course they will. Who's going to go out and see movies? Who really cares? I know for a fact, judging from finding out what I learned about the home video industry, that only 20% of consumers, if given a choice, would buy a movie that had special features as opposed to the movie-only disc. Most consumers are not imagination connoisseurs. They don't care about the special features. That's 20% of the people. That means 80%. So I'm looking at the streaming versus going to the movie theaters. Sure, do people like to go to the movie theaters? Yes. But you know what? Only 20% of the population really, and that's if that. And that's based on my own experience. Only 20% of our population really wants to go to the movie theaters. So you've got 80% left that are going to stream. It's not going to be 50-50. It's going to be 80-20, if not more. And if it's 80-20, if not more, as I believe, movie theaters are doomed. Now, I don't want to be the guy that says that, but this article, what the AT&T executives and what a lot of Hollywood knows is true, well, that's it. It is true. The business is now moving away from the theatrical experience. And it's just, that was inevitable. That was inevitable because, again, only 20% of the population is really interested in the experience of going to the movies. You know, you hear these things, oh, people always need stuff to do. Our civilization has become, people are on Zoom calls now, but before that, kids are on, I mean, when I was growing up, when you were growing up, if you're younger than me, not so much, but if you grew up in the post-world, internet world, post-social media world, you can hang out with your friends via FaceTime all day long if you want. You're always in contact with your friends. So it's not necessarily imperative. It's always fun when you go do something, but it's a different world. Like when I was growing up, you talk to somebody on the phone, you couldn't see them. Getting together and going to do something and sharing collective experiences was a big deal. And all the people that say, oh, come on, people are always going to want to go out to the movies. They're always going to go out and want to do something. That's based on the premise that you couldn't hang with your friends on video. I mean, you have a big enough screen, you can turn it on. You can both be hanging out in your room, walking all over the place, and you've got a full-size version of your friend. They're not really there, but you're talking to them in real time. They might as well be, you know? I mean, we live in a different world, and that world is rapidly changing. So the big thing here is all of the people, what AT&T has done with HBO Max is they tore a bandage off. They did not play their finesse game here. And what you need to do is, even when the movie theaters are gone, all of these great talents that have worked in the entertainment business for a long time, actors, technicians, directors, they're going to be the same people that you're going to want to have make movies for your streaming service for the next forever. And to piss them off was a critical and business blunder of epic proportions. And I don't know if they're going to recover. What they've done is, you know, people have betrayed Warner Brothers, but those AT&T executives, I think out of arrogance, didn't realize what they were doing, and they betrayed the trust of all of their people. As the letter I wrote from my industry insider friend mentioned, there are lawyers that are lining up to fight this case because they have all these filmmakers they've got contracts. Some of them, I mean, ironclad contracts that give box office bumps. So theoretically, what Warner Media did might put them in violation of all of these contracts, in which case there is a legal case to be opened up. And if you're somebody that knew you were going to get if you knew your movie was going to make $1 billion and you got box office bumps along the way at, say, 300 million and 500 million and 750 million and $1 billion, what Warner Brothers is going to say, well, how do you know? It's all speculative because we didn't have the opening that we were going to have. And the answer would be that, well, you chose to do that. And it'll just become this ugly, horrible, you're going to have AT&T battling the very people that made their content. It's the worst place to be. And as my industry contact friend said, there are litigators, the lawyers are lining up to fight these battles. Lining up. And as he put it, people weren't that mad until they started hearing from the lawyers, and the lawyers started telling them what was up. So now let's go back to this James Wan situation. Warner Brothers' unilateral decision to put the film day and date on its own streamer with no deal in place looks like a lawsuit waiting to happen. The source says there is no version of a deal with Warner's that does not include an exclusive theatrical release of the film. Starlight is said to be as unhappy as Legendary, which produced Dune as well as Godzilla vs. Kong, and plans to fight Warner's release plan. It doesn't seem impossible that the two Chinese-owned companies could join forces in litigation against Warner's. Legendary declined to comment, and an attorney for Starlight did not respond to a request for comment. Warner's now has to navigate deals with dozens of players. The poor business affairs lawyers at Warner Media, I do not envy them, producer Jason Blum said on my podcast, KCRW's The Business. They have to deal with 17 groups of people who can all say, I want to get paid as if my movie did $1 billion, just like you did for Wonder Woman. Clearly, they can't do that, and now they're set up in this super contentious relationship. A source involved with the deal-making on one film that's caught up in the new Warner strategy says agencies, producers, and talent have to take these talks to the mat. When you let one company do whatever it wants, it opens the door to another company doing it in different circumstances. Absolutely right. 100%. And this is something that was needless. It did not have to happen. They did this to themselves because AT&T has swept into this business, and the way they've gotten rid of people, they don't quite know what they've done. They've bitten off a little bit more than they can chew. It's going to be interesting to see where all of this winds up. I'm certainly interested. I mean, if nothing else, this is the kind of stuff that I want to talk about on this show. As you know, I like doing industry analysis or Monday morning quarterbacking of what the industry is doing. I'm always shocked. Again, I've said nobody can get in their own way like Hollywood can. And this is a perfect example of that. And we'll see where all of this winds up, because I don't know if it's going to wind up anywhere good. It's certainly going to wind up someplace that is going to be very, very expensive for all the players involved. And you know what? Didn't have to happen. Didn't have to happen. I don't think anybody really anticipated just how bad it was going to get. But oh yes. Now I have a gaggle of letters. I have so many letters that I haven't gotten through, so bear with me. I don't even know where to begin. I don't even know where to begin. Omar94. Let's begin with Omar. Omar says, hi, Rob, moderators and Post-Geek Singularity. We recently saw the new announcements for the MCU going forward, and this got me thinking about what else could be done. One thing I thought about, but I don't know if Marvel will actually do, is bring in the Sentry for a movie or TV show. I remember MCU screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely once talking about doing a Superman story and handling it the way they did Captain America. If Marvel decides to do the Sentry, Marcus and McFeely can have their chance to incorporate their ideas for Superman into Sentry, since he's Marvel's Superman-type character, in a manner of speaking. Unfortunately, there are two problems with adapting the Sentry for the MCU. The first is that creators have to do a lot of retconning. In his first appearance ever in the comics, the original Paul Jenkins and Jay Lee series, a lot of retconning was done to explain the Sentry's background, where he was once a hero but was forgotten. So heroes like Spider-Man and Mr. Fantastic help remind him of who he was. For the MCU, the creators would have to answer questions like, well, where has he been all this time? Why has nobody ever seen or heard of him? Why did he not help out all those times there was trouble? Why is there no archive footage and arrest records of him, or records of him? The second appearance would be the story. In his first comics appearance, the story was about the Sentry not remembering his past and finding out about it. For the MCU, that story would have been told to introduce the character, and that's the problem. The story's already been done with Captain Marvel. The creators would have to repeat the plot points of Captain Marvel for the Sentry almost beat for beat. I would find it interesting to see if the Sentry got introduced. If he is introduced, maybe he might become the face of the MCU in the future. Currently, Captain Marvel is considered the most powerful character in the MCU. However, if the creators follow the comics, Sentry will become the most powerful character, since he is actually more powerful than her. It's a bit of a similar situation for Shuri in Black Panther. She's the smartest person in the MCU right now. However, that might change once Reed Richards is introduced. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, Omar, I got one word for you. The quantum realm. The Sentry just comes from another iteration of our universe and comes to our Earth. Nobody remembers him because he's never been here. And he doesn't know how he got here. And his mind's been wiped or something, but he's not from our Earth. But he is, in fact, the Sentry. And I think that could be really interesting. For whatever reason, his quantum signature does not let him get back to where he needs to be. Fantasy Fan writes in. Fantasy Fan says, I became a scientist because my mum was a fan of Star Trek, and we saw women on the Enterprise exploring the solar system, and then when Deep Space Nine came on, which is actually my favorite series, some of the female characters had such well-written stories, you kept wanting more, but they also had flaws, and they were not perfect. I actually think the story writing started to wane in Voyager. I never got to see the Enterprise, but when I heard it was a hologram story, I wasn't going to spend hours watching it. I am totally dismayed about the Discovery series, and to think they have had Jason Isaacs and Michelle Yeoh in the series, but the writing is rubbish. I actually think going into the future with the solar system not having the Federation and being in turmoil could have brought about a good series with the right writers behind it. Thanks, Robert, and keep up the good work. Well, thank you, Fantasy Fan. Sounds like you had a good mum, and she brought you up correctly. I think that's definitely a good thing, so say hi to her for me. Mark Samuels writes in, Hi, Rob. I have been watching Robservations for several months, and I wanted to write to you about Star Trek Discovery. On the episode Terra Firma Part 1, it is said that Discovery traveled forward from 2379 and across from an alternate universe created by a temporal incursion of the Romulan mining ship. I made this mistake too, and so did Anti-Trekker. They were talking about the character Yor, the alien character in the Next Generation uniform, I believe. So they didn't mean the Discovery. But yes, let's go on and read what you're saying. On the episode Terra Firma Part 1, it is said that Discovery traveled forward from 2379. The thing is, Discovery left the 23rd century, so that would be 22, not 23, and across from an alternate universe created by the temporal incursion of a Romulan mining ship. I focused in on the words across from an alternate universe since they traveled from an alternate universe, the Kelvin universe, since this is the one created by the temporal incursion. They must now be in a different universe, either the prime universe or a completely different one altogether. What are your thoughts about this, Mark Samuels? Well, Mark, thanks for writing in. Look, I honestly don't... If they were to say that the Discovery universe is a different universe from the prime Star Trek timeline, and when I say prime timeline, I mean from the original series, from TOS, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and the animated series. That's the real prime timeline. Now, all they have to say is that this is a different universe. Why not? I like the idea it's the Kelvin-verse. You know, if we see the Enterprise they refit it stupidly on the ground on Earth into the Enterprise we saw the Kelvin movies. I would have no problem with that, you know, but I don't think they really know, but I think that was a mistake. Cronenberg was actually referring to that particular character. But clearly, my biggest problem with both Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard is they don't resemble the universes that they came from. It's very hard to reconcile, to sit there and go, this Captain Picard doesn't act anything like our Captain Picard. Well, life gets in the way. Yeah, but, people don't fundamentally change that much. And the character of Jean-Luc Picard was so emasculated and so, I think, sad in Picard that how could that possibly be the Jean-Luc Picard we last left in Nemesis? I don't know. But I think, you're not wrong about all of that. We'll see if it all plays out. Thomas Bartoldi is here. Thomas says, behind the scenes may be something that fascinates us all in one way or another. I personally love films in every which way. It's more than just watching a good film or television show for me. I even find those films that might not be films that might not be what one might call, not the best film or television show for that matter, have quite an interesting story when one pulls out the magnifying glass to take a much deeper look. Well, hello, Rob, and members of the Post-Geek Singularity. It is I, fellow nerd, self-proclaimed lover of behind-the-scenes, geek, collector of film, gotta have the extra features, Thomas Bartoldi. I love the behind-the-scenes of film and television. It's not just a performer on the screen that makes the films or series that we love, but so many other wonderful people who work behind the scenes. I have personally loved watching how a film series is made. Much goes into it. Even had a extra walking in the background, may have a small part, but they have a story to tell. They do. I used to live in California myself some time ago. I love the behind the scenes so much that I became one of these extras. I worked in the background and always enjoyed playing a small role. Being a kid walking the school hallways or sitting in a classroom or something as simple as playing a dead body in a plane crash scene. I got to do that on a show called Crossing Jordan. I remember the Crossing Jordan show. And I was a dead person. I've been the kid in classrooms, in the cafeteria, or simply walking the hallway. I didn't go to middle school as I worked on movies, and even our school was done on set. Child actors attended school and then worked limited hours on set, and I continued to work as an extra till I was 22. I've got to work on both films and television shows. Crossing Jordan was one of them. I even did a role behind the scenes in adult entertainment when I was 18. There's even extras in porn. I did some of that, and it was fascinating, really. Of course, I did this after I moved out of my parents' house. I could have even been in porn, as I met a few people in the business who could have done it. I mainly stuck to extra roles in other forms of film and television, however. Honestly, at times I wonder why I just didn't go into porn. For one, I was raised Christian, and that may have played a small part. Still, I often wonder. I later moved to Las Vegas to help take care of my father. I could have done porn then, but didn't. I had left working as an extra and put it behind me, or so I had thought. And then I came back to it. They filmed movies and television shows in Vegas as well. I didn't do the porn thing again, however. Nevertheless, it was a wonderful experience, and I learned just how hard people behind the scenes work to make our favorite movies and shows. I did 2 films in Las Vegas as an extra. The first was the remake, the remake of Escape from Witch Mountain. I was also working at the Horseshoe Hotel and Casino at the time as well, and that's how I got to meet Eric Bana and Robert Duvall. They were going to be filming a movie about poker. It was a film called Lucky You. I worked as a chip runner. You get people poker chips. I kind of grew up learning about poker from my dad. The film was about a poker player who won the World Series of Poker, and Eric Bana played that part. I was merely a chip runner cast to play a casino worker. Rather than work in the normal poker room, I worked on the film as an extra. I had a blast. It may have been my favorite experience working as an extra. One day on set during the setup for a scene, I got to tell Eric Bana that I love the Hulk movie. The next day, while on the back lot, as it's called. This, as you know, Rob, is where they set up trailers for actors, makeup trailers, and where you eat some of the best foods, movie-style buffet foods 3 times a day or even more. I worked about 15 or more hours a day and maybe up to 20 hours on set. I got to know the AD pretty well, and he had me working more than a lot of the extras there. I was on set quite a bit, but back to the parking lot. We played poker one day with the crew of the film. We did these one-table poker tournaments called Satellites. They even filmed the first few of them. The people who won got to sit at a final table and they'd see who'd play to be back. They'd see who would play to be the backlot poker champion. I made that table. I won that tournament. it was pretty cool that I got to ask Eric Bana about the Hulk, and he congratulated me on my epic backlot winning streak. I also got to meet Robert Duvall, who was cast to play Eric Bana's father in the film. He sat down across from me. I was nervous. Then he asked what I did at the casino, and I explained to him my job. When we were done talking, I got to introduce my own father to his favorite movie star, Robert Duvall. What a cool story. I also helped teach Robert Duvall how to play poker. I faced him one-on-one cards in hand, and he looks to me and says, in Days of Thunder-like fashion with a shit-eating grin, "I raise your ass." And we all laughed. This is all for fun, of course. I had an enjoyable experience with working as an extra, which only enhances my enjoyment of film. Thank you for the time you took, Rob, in reading my letter. I felt like sharing my love and experience of working in Hollywood and why I love behind the scenes of television and film so damn much. Hope this wonderful community gets to enjoy the story I also enjoyed telling. Well, I think they did, Thomas, and I very much encourage you to write in and tell us more stories of your interesting exploits. I'm sure people will always like to hear them. I do. So please keep writing in. This one comes from Bill. It's Bill. I wrote this blog. I wrote this to blog I have almost 2 years ago. Some thoughts I had about Star Trek Discovery. Uh-oh. I came to be a Trekkie in my early teens. Star Trek, the original series, was in heavy syndication, and it was aired on a local TV station right about the time I would get home from school. I watched enough of it over a three-year period that I knew just about every episode by heart. I had all the original series recorded on VHS. I watched the movies on rented tapes and copied them for my collection. I was hooked. The interaction between characters was great. The lore and the hopefulness of the future were very appealing to me. In 1987, I saw my first glimpse of Star Trek The Next Generation from promo commercials. I was very excited about the new show and a little worried the characters would not live up to the original series. I remember buying a sci-fi magazine called Starlog just to get more information on the series. I know it well. When Star Trek The Next Generation aired its premiere, I was delighted. I really loved the cameo from DeForest Kelley, and my worries about the characters were gone. I liked all the characters and their backstories, and as the seasons went on, I grew to love it. At some point when talking about Star Trek, someone came up with a sort of shorthand when talking about the different shows. Star Trek, the original series, became TOS, and The Next Generation became TNG. In 93, Deep Space Nine premiered and immediately became DS9, and DS9 for short. Again, I was delighted with the cast, but I had some issues with it being a space station and not a starship. But as the episodes came out, the strong character writing removed any issues I had with the station. In 1995, another Star Trek series came out called Star Trek Voyager, which became Voyager for short, VOY. I was delighted by the strong characters. It came out after TNG had ended its run, so there was a kind of vacuum it filled for me. To this day, I can see just a few seconds of any original series episode, TNG, Voyager, or Deep Space Nine, and tell you the plot, synopsis, and in many cases the episode title. At this point, it is fair to say that Star Trek was a futuristic, character-driven ensemble franchise. The character interaction was a key component of Star Trek. In 2001, shortly after Star Trek V had ended, or Star Trek Voyager had ended, and a couple of years after Deep Space Nine ended, Enterprise debuted, and I made it a point to catch the premiere episode, and I was perplexed at why they decided to go back before TOS while dropping Star Trek from the title. I tried watching more episodes, but it kind of bugged me that the NX-01 Enterprise seemed more advanced than the NCC-1701 Enterprise. It was like watching a World War II-era movie with all the Sherman tanks replaced with M1A1 Abrams tanks. I only watched a dozen or so episodes, and I just didn't make time to catch everyone. Well, you can watch our Blu-rays that I helped produce the documentaries for. Then the J.J. Abrams Star Trek reboot came out, and I went to see the first one in theaters and was disappointed with the whole thing. I paid no attention to the next two J.J. Star Trek movies, and I was glad to hear it was placed in its own alternate timeline. In 2016, I started to hear rumors of a new Star Trek series, and then the name was released, Star Trek Discovery. My first thought was, how in the world did they not know it would be shortened to STD? I don't know. Then they released a promo showing the Discovery in an asteroid dry dock of some sort, and I immediately recognized it as the concept design from the Star Trek Phase 2 television series that never took off. It's actually, because I made this mistake before, it's actually the design from the aborted Planet of the Titans Star Trek feature film that Toshiro Mifune was supposed to play a Klingon in, that was going to be directed by Philip Invasion of the Body Snatchers Kaufman, who also went on to co-write the storyline for Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he made movies like Rising Sun and The Unbearable Lightness of Being, and my favorite, the right stuff. Again, they were going to a pre-TOS timeline and was supposed to be in the prime timeline again, and I thought, why go back? We were told that the captain and the crew model was not going to be used and instead would focus on someone other than the captain. I thought as long as the characters were well written, it should be okay. Seemed odd to abandon the model that worked for 5 series and hundreds of episodes. I heard the lead was to be named Michael Berman, and I thought that it was a nice nod to Mike Akuda and Rick Berman, 2 prominent people who helped bring the franchise shows to us. Nope, it turns out I heard it wrong and the name was actually Michael Burnham. No nod, just a coincidence. I watched the first 2 episodes and was dumbfounded by how much they got wrong. The Shenzhou was not a Roddenberry timeline TOS era ship, period. It was way more advanced than the 1701 Enterprise. The Klingons were ridiculous rubber-masked actors with teeth prosthetics so large it sounded like they were reading their lines with marbles in their mouths. Holographic communication was barely a thing in Deep Space Nine. Booby-trapping bodies. Georgiou is dead set against firing first on the Klingons, but booby-trapping the dead is okay? One problem was the way the writers wrote Michael Burnham. I feel they wanted people to not like her. I like Saru. I like Captain Georgiou. Burnham made every possible wrong decision a first officer could make. Burnham decided to mutiny. Burnham decided to attack her captain. Burnham decided to fire first. Burnham tried to kill Takuvma when her objective was to capture him and potentially stop the war before it starts. A plan she came up with. What is it about Burnham I'm supposed to like? That she's Spock's adoptive sister? Look at it this way. If Michael Burnham was not the lead and she never appeared in Star Trek Discovery past the 2nd episode, would you say she was a well-written character? I say no, because I have no interest in following this character's journey. This brings us to the main problem. Star Trek Discovery isn't about a group of characters on board a starship in the future. It's about Michael Burnham's personal journey through life, who happens to be on a starship in the future. Ooh, you got that right. We park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. I haven't watched past the first 2 episodes, but I've watched reviews of every episode on YouTube from both people who like it and people who dislike it. And do you know what nearly everyone says why they like or love or dislike and hate it? Michael Burnham. What does this tell you? It tells you that Michael Burnham is a divisive character. Another problem is CBS decided to lock everything past the first 2 episodes behind a paywall. Who in their right mind was going to pay for more of a show that failed to deliver a good Star Trek show in the first 2 episodes? Not me. Now, the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager are all decidedly in the Roddenberry timeline. I say Roddenberry timeline because Gene Roddenberry had a direct guiding hand in TOS and TNG, while DS9 and Voyager were made from the Roddenberry Bible, as it were. Enterprise is hard to pin down as direct Roddenberry Star Trek because of how far removed it was from his influence. The people at CBS decided to make a Star Trek series set before TOS, but what they failed to realize is that it limited them to pre-TOS technology. You have to limit your visual style to TOS, or at the most, the visual style of TOS movies. No holodecks, no holocommunications, no bridges that are bigger than most people's houses, no tech that predates your era. It's really simple. You cannot make a movie or series about the past with tech from the future. For instance, you can't make a World War II era movie about the landing on the beaches of Normandy in 1944 with elite Navy SEALs using LCAC transports supported by the Nimitz-class carriers, launching 14 Tomcats for air support, and then claim that it's an authentic representation of that era. I'm not saying you can't make a movie like that. I am saying that you can't make a movie and claim it is historically accurate. People will look at you like you lost your mind. Canon matters, especially when it's made-up history. What happens when you mess with canon in a way that rewrites the history of the people? They get upset, plain and simple. It sends a message to fans of TOS that your TOS doesn't matter, and only our interpretation of it does. Bravo, sir. You certainly got that right. Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and Star Trek V Voyager, and even Enterprise had episodes that had them interact with TOS, and they all handled the visuals absolutely perfectly. Star Trek Voyager in particular did an outstanding job of recreating events from Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, and went so far as to use the original actors of the movie in the Season 3, Episode 2 flashback. They did. TNG did an outstanding episode that included Scotty in the bridge of the original Enterprise in Season 6. DS9 Season 5's Trouble and Tribulations literally inserted cast members into footage of the original series episode, The Trouble with Tribbles, and it was handled with great care and a joy to watch. I don't know why part of the human psyche that deals with established history gets all upset at the notion of changing that history, but it is an extremely powerful force in most people. Our memories mean something to us, and it could be said that we are our memories. When someone comes along and says, hey, all that stuff you remember about that thing is all wrong, and here's my interpretation of how it really happened, and you must accept it. That is exactly what they're doing, by the way. That is a non-starter. People don't work that way. This is a reason why most, if not all, reboots fail. CBS simply doesn't care about continuity because, as it turns out, all of the rebooted movies are supposed to be from the Prime timeline. As Midnight's Edge explains in the Star Trek Discovery, The Prime Deception, CBS and Paramount Viacom rights explain that Kelvin and Prime timelines are both not the Roddenberry timeline. It appears to be the reason CBS keeps saying that STD will converge back into the Prime timeline. Remember, the Prime timeline is not the Roddenberry timeline. They know they can't legally make Star Trek Discovery look or feel like Star Trek because of the license deals CBS and Paramount worked out. So, actually, this is a really long letter. It goes on and on and on, actually. But listen, this letter is on the website, and I want to say thank you for writing this. Let me get to your final thoughts. To me, Star Trek Discovery can be summed up like this. It's simply, which is, he cites something on the sets for Next Generation. They would label things GNDN, like you'd see piping and stuff, and that stood for goes nowhere and does nothing. And I will always have the Roddenberry Star Trek, and no amount of retconning will ever change that. That is true. I want to thank you for writing that in, Bill. An insightful letter, so thank you for that. Now let's see what you guys are saying over here. I don't know who's here. I don't know. Emil Johansson is here. Who owns the 90s, says Emil. That's a good question. Is it the people that were kids during the 90s, adults during the 90s, or teenagers during the 90s, or the old people that made movies and pop culture during the 90s? I will tell you, I've got an answer for that. I think that the people that, I would give it to youth, and I would say if you came of age in the 90s, whatever that means, if you came of age in the 90s, whether you came of age when you were younger or later, out of college, in college, whatever you came of age, you get to claim that era as your own. Because if you came of age in the 90s, you're more aware of all that cultural stuff. So that's my definition. Emil Johansson also says, what president would God vote for? And if God came down to earth, would I get to vote for someone else to lead? I don't know. I don't think God would vote. I think if God voted in the American election, that would be him anointing America as being like better than the rest of the world. And I don't think God would do that. I think God would respectfully decline. I do. So you would not get he would not vote, but he would appreciate that you offered him the opportunity, or she would appreciate the opportunity. You never know. Martino from Under the Sea. Oh my God, Martino from Under the Sea. What a very, very generous support of the channel, sir. Thank you very much. Aronnax and party captives aboard monster submarine boat based 12 inches, 19 feet. What is that? 169 by 28 feet. By the way, when will there be a whining about the motion picture? Preparing a special tip for that. You know, I'll tell you, first of all, thank you for generously supporting the channel. Elizabeth and I went and saw the motion picture in the theater for its 40th anniversary, and I was like, let's do it again. And she was not very enthusiastic. And I did that 4.5 hour long show with with The Critical Drinker. We did 4.5 hours on the motion picture, The Critical Drinker and I. And I was like, you know what? I can't talk about the motion picture anymore. I mean, I can, but I thought it would be a little bit of overkill. So as much as you have a special tip for that, and I very much appreciate that, I'm going to have to hold off maybe next year for the 42nd anniversary for life, because all the answers to life, the universe, and everything are 42, and it will be the motion picture's 42nd anniversary next December 7th. So, yeah. But thank you for that. Again, thank you generously supporting the channel. Hapkido Locke says, congrats on the growth, Rob, and hey, I miss the laundry room. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can see it again. That's why I went back and got this from the original. There I was. I set myself up strategically looking into. What's interesting about this room now is this is Elizabeth's studio. So this is where she paints now. All my stuff's out of there. And she paints in the studio. So it's pretty neat. I mean, she's doing some amazing stuff there, and it looks totally different. So, but I kind of miss that too, to be honest. Calvin Bowes is here, and he says, will we see No Time to Die in 2021? How many times can they delay it before it gets impossible to make the money they need to pay the debt? A good question. I think we're going to see it. I mean, if there's really a vaccine, it's going to take, look, to get this vaccine, they can't manufacture enough of it, but we'll probably, the Gen Pop will get it next summer, maybe. Probably earlier, but you never know. Depends how much there is, I think. Mr. Tickle Trunk sends in a super chat and says, congratulations on 2 years. Happy birthday. Side note, I keep trying to add peen to my name just to keep the meme alive, but it just gets worse. Yeah, you know, the great thing about these jokes is that just let them play out for that day. Let them burn out, fade away, and then bring them back. Let's see. Jared Snyder says, hey, Rob, great films dropped today. Maybe instead of having a 600 episode celebration, wait till we get to the mark of your favorite villain 6,000 episodes later. You mean the villain? You mean Satan? Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if I could do that. By the way, yeah, today was a big day for physical media. Yeah, like Cinema Paradiso, although a lot of my things got delayed. I should have Tenet, though. Tenet 4K came out. A lot of things. My Tremors 4K was delayed at Amazon, but I ordered it from Diabolic DVD, so I should have that too. Who knows? But yeah, today's a big day. We'll be talking about that. There is another episode. I've had some computer issues editorially, but I received a gigantic drive in the mail today, so I'm going to move everything off of my main computer onto the drive, and so I can edit. So there's a video I have to do for the project I'm working on, the documentary project. Let's Get Physical Media. I wasn't able to do that, and I haven't been able to finish a lot of things, but now I can. So you'll get those. Mr. Tickle Trunk goes on to say, we're all here for the idea sex. Nice that people from all over just talk about stuff. The chat is one big brain orgy, and I love that. Ooh, I like that. I like that the chat is a brain orgy. Let's see. As I'm going to look over to the chat, I'm going to see, has anybody seen Wolf of Snow Hollow, says Casey McNatt. I haven't yet. I can't wait to see it. Jordan Britt says, I got to meet President Sheridan this year before the beer bug shut down everything. You got to meet President Sheridan. Does that mean you met Tron too? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Hey, you know who's here? Dieter Bastian's here. The laundry set had a great horror vibe with the dark door to the other room. I don't know what you're talking about, but Dieter, I should have discs. I should have discs this week. I don't know which discs, but some discs. I'm glad that we're having a brain orgy. Robservations, come for the brain orgy. Or have a brain orgy and come? I think come for the brain orgy. I'm gonna make that the new shirt. Robservations. The Robservations live chat. Come for the brain orgy. I love it. Thank you for that. I'll give you full credit. Devin Hilton sends in a super chat and says, speaking of plague scripts, are you familiar with Harrow Alley, the supposedly greatest script never made? George C. Scott went into raptures about it. I'm not, but let me find out about that. Well, it's got the PDF here. Yeah, I will download that. How interesting. Wow, Harrow Alley, this is interesting. So a cursory glance. One of Hollywood's long-lost scripts, the period horror thriller Harrow Alley, could finally see the light of day after British actor and writer Emma Thompson partnered with his Dark Materials producer Bad Wolf to develop it for the small screen. The project is set up at HBO. Well, there you go. You might get to see it. Joshua Levesque writes in. Our moderator Josh says, hey, Rob, congrats on 2 awesome years of Robservations. Happy to have joined along the way. Also got a question. Which episode of The Mandalorian Season 2 has been your favorite so far? And what have been some of this season's strengths and weaknesses for you? Again, I think the weakness of the show is the episodic nature of it, but I also think that's kind of the point. I think Bill Burr had the finest scene in the whole series when he's talking to his former Imperial CO. That was an amazing, amazing sequence, really well directed. I think just the last three, I feel like there's an ongoing story. We're really getting a lot of Imperial backstory. We're learning about the characters. I think the last 3 or 4 episodes have all been really good. I think it's where the show should be. Hope they can keep it up. The weaknesses, I think some of the stuff's a little rude. Overall, it's a very simplistic show. And the one exchange between that Imperial officer and Bill Burr's character is that there's a lot of depth. You learn a lot about both guys. And you learn a lot about where the Empire's at. And I thought that was really, really good. I really like that. C. Quinn sends in a super chat and says, "Hey, Rob, congrats on your 2-year anniversary. Big Wild Cards fan here. Do you think we'll ever get to see them on the big or little screen?" Well, Melinda Snodgrass has been working on it for a long time, and George R. R. Martin obviously is involved. Let's see. Do I have one that I can get a hold of right here? Oh, they're all behind. I got a big stack of omnibuses here. I'm moving around. I can't get to my Wild Cards books. But what C. Quinn is asking, George R. R. Martin and Melinda Snodgrass edited what they called, at first, they started out as mosaic novels. And the first one, Wild Cards is what it's called. And then they have different card-themed titles like Joker's Wild or Aces High or something. And it's really good. The Wild Card series is great. Way, way before the 80s and 90s, the series appeared. And the Wild Card series is an alternate history take beginning at the end of World War II. And at the end of World War II, an alien, Dr. Tachyon, comes down and tells us, look, my people are going to detonate a virus on the Earth to test it against mankind. And they do. And they're able to sort of thwart it, but it does get detonated over a part of New York, and the people that are affected are either aces, meaning they become superheroes, or they're jokers, and they become supervillains or monsters or something adverse happens to them. But then it takes you through, like, for instance, in the alternate history, Jim Morrison, the lead singer of The Doors, really is the Lizard King. He transforms into a lizard and hypnotizes people from the stage. It's stuff like that. It's an incredible series, and I highly recommend it. Hey, Midnight's Edge After Dark is here. Congratulations. This thing with AT&T is what I've been trying to say. It's all about HBO Max. Nothing about theaters being closed. It's all for subscriptions. Oh, it is. It's all for subscription and to secure up that money. That's what it's all about. Calvin Bowes goes on to say, what Warner Brothers is doing reminds me of in the movie 8 Men Out, when the White Sox owner pulled his star pitcher from the last 4 games so I wouldn't get his 24-game bonus. Yeah, it's pretty bogus. And, you can't, like, they're going to have to make good on their contracts. They're going to have to assume if Wonder Woman 84, like they paid off Patty Jenkins and paid off Gal Gadot, they have to assume that those movies are going to make a certain amount, and then you're going to have to pay out commensurately. You can't say that, oh, this movie was never going to make that amount. Well, then you're like, well, then release it and find out. You decided not to release it, so how do you know? So it's not good. Calvin Markins, oh, thank you, sending a very nice super chat. Thank you, Calvin Markins. Nick Markins sent in a very nice super chat. Thank you very much for that, Nick. I appreciate it. I was still looking at Calvin's name. Nick says, congrats on the anniversary, Rob. Keep up the good work, and thanks for all the recommendations of classic sci-fi and horror movies. Long live our master of fun and wonder. Well, thank you very much, Nick. I appreciate that. I hope I can live long enough to see myself turn into the villain. Some people would say I already am. Justin Toner. Justin, how are you? All my mods here. Cheers to 2 years of Robservations and this channel. Honored to be a part of the PGS and the team. Also, today is the anniversary of the theatrical release of Return of Godzilla, or Godzilla 85. Love that film. I like Godzilla 85. It's cool. Brought in a whole new era. Always a good thing when it comes to Godzilla movies. So thanks for that, and thanks for being a great mod. Paul Gilmore sends in a tip and says, with the Warner Brothers debacle because of not notifying and meeting with filmmakers and Legendary, the DGA is threatening to boycott and the mess they created for themselves. Do you think Toby Emmerich will end up getting fired for this decision? I don't. Look, as I found out, it was Toby Emmerich's idea. He saw the writing on the wall, and everybody's moving towards streaming, and Toby Emmerich's a survivor. He wants to go in and be the savior of HBO Max because that's where they're going to wind up. Make no mistake, the entire business is going that direction. It's just going to take time. What they tried to do was jumpstart it too quickly. They wanted it to happen now because they have no interest in theaters or anything. All they care about is their infrastructure and feeding that infrastructure. That's it. That's all they care about. That's all they care about because they own the method of distribution. So that's why they're totally, that's why they want it. Paul Gilmore says, I just got The Last Emperor Criterion. Ooh, it's great. I forgot how beautiful this movie and the scope of it is. It's a gorgeous film. I love The Last Emperor. I love it a lot. And the Criterion disc is great. I also have an Italian 3D conversion of The Last Emperor, but I hear it's not very good. I've never actually watched it. I just got it just to have it. But I hear it's really not good, which is kind of too bad. Bob Newhart sends in a tip and says, funny how I spent the day telling people online how I hate the Connors for the same reason as you hate Discovery. In both cases, they are disrespectful to the characters from their original series. I guess reboots just don't work. Well, they can. I mean, they can work if they're good. I think they can, but that's interesting. I never thought about that. I didn't realize people didn't like the Connors. I thought it was just they're playing the same characters, but I guess not. Anonymous sends in a tip. Thank you, Anonymous. I appreciate that very much. Hi, Rob. I have not been able to support the channel like I've wanted to. Happy holidays to you, Liz, and the family, and to all members of the Post-Geek Singularity. In the words of Graham Kerr, good tidings of kumquats and soy. Laugh out loud. Cheers to you all. Well, thank you, Anonymous. I very much appreciate that. I will tell Liz that some nameless, faceless individual tipped us well. We can go buy produce at the grocery store. Or I can pay for bindings of the books that we're going to make together. Journey's End sends in a super chat and says, I've submitted our IICFF film this morning, edited all night to get it done on time. Thanks again for putting this festival together, Rob. It's been a fun 3 months putting it together. Man, I got to tell you, I can't wait to watch that. I wonder what the name of it is. What you said you submitted it this morning. I'll see it. I'll look at it tonight. Very exciting. Very exciting. Joseph became a member and Hummingbirder1 became a member. Thanks for becoming members. Alexander Wilson's here and says, speaking of George R.R. Martin, what are your thoughts on the casting of the Game of Thrones prequel, House of Dragons, and overall thoughts about it? People are going to go nuts if they see a dragon versus dragon with sword fighting. That's what I want to see. I want to see dudes like jumping from one dragon taking over to another, like repel borders, like in Flash Gordon, but instead of the War Rocket Ajax, it's dragons. I think the casting's good. It's they're European. I think it's good. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope it is good. I really do. I got Bob Kowal says, do the mods have to clean up the gray matter after the brain orgy? Oh, Bob. Are you gonna? You know what? You should make next year's Halloween theme at your house brain orgy. Infestation 2 brain orgy. Bot flies are everywhere. Cesar Rivera sends in a tip and says, hey, Rob, where can I find the Tron Hot Toys? I would like to get some. Also, have you heard any insider info about Tron that you can share, if possible, about the third film or anything Tron related? Tron Legacy is one of my favorite films ever. I'm a huge fan of Tron. I don't know. I mean, it's funny. I think about that. This is the Tron Legacy Hot I showed this the other day, but this is the Tron Legacy Hot Toys, and it lights up. I don't have any batteries in it, but it's it's really, really great. And then they made a Jeff Bridges figure, which I have, but I don't know where you can get them. I mean, those are like 10 years old. So Hot Toys didn't make nearly as many of them as they'd make from, say, a Star Wars movie or something, but it's pretty cool to have them. I mean, I really do enjoy them. But yeah, that's what they made from Tron 2 or Tron Legacy. They made Garrett Hedlund on the bike, and they made Jeff Bridges in both the white and the black suit. He comes with both suits, so that's pretty cool. I love that, but I haven't heard anything about new Tron. Nothing. Zero, which is kind of a bummer because, as you know, I love Tron, and it was disappointing to not get a third one, because I really wanted a third one. Didn't we all? Alexander Wilson said, I was watching a panel that had Roxy Stryer and nobody knew about the Tulsa massacre until Watchmen depicted it last year. I'm shocked that so many people don't know about that event. I have to give it up to Damon Lindelof. Yeah, I think a lot of people, Black Wall Street, it wasn't just that. I mean, you basically had a bunch of white people decide, whether they were jealous or whatever, decided to put an entire black community in its place, and they murdered like 300 people. They burned down the businesses. They killed, raped, murdered. It's unbelievable when you find out what really happened there. And it was, what a horrific, awful thing. I mean, you have a group of people that are successful, so, we're going to go destroy them because they're better than you. It's crazy. But yeah, I thought that was a really interesting place to start. And it made sense. I thought it was really good for the show. I really did. Danny Boy. I have a letter I have to read from you, Danny Boy. Hi, Rob. Congrats on the 2-year anniversary. By the way, today is when Superman was released in theaters 42 years ago. My love for Superman was born. Wow. 42 years ago. That's crazy talk. Wow, that is amazing. 22 years ago. My God. 42 years ago. 42 years ago. I was at, you know what, I can tell you exactly where I was. The next day, not on the opening day, but the next day, I was at the John Dance Theater where I saw Logan's Run, where I saw Star Trek the Motion Picture and Star Trek 2. That's where I saw Superman, the movie. Well, listen, I actually am so inundated with work because I'm behind on a few things, and I'm going to end this chat now. We've been doing over 90 minutes. Again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank people like the Richard, of course, Joshua Levesque, Justin Toner is here. I don't know if the Richard's here, but I want to thank the Richard is here. I want to thank the Richard and all of you people. I want to thank everybody for being imagination connoisseurs and participating in the way that they do in this channel. We're going to try and broaden our horizons, make it bigger, do some more cool stuff. The film festival, I'm going to be promoting it pretty heavily. You might get tired of all the promotion over the next month, basically, but it's been great. We just keep getting in. There are 2 really good films that dropped today, so check it out. If you go to the Burnettwork page, the Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival is on the top there. And really, there's some really impressive films. I've been very, very, very impressed. So thank you for that. Thanks for supporting the channel in all the ways that you can. And so I'm going to start dropping some member videos. I keep saying part of the reason I haven't done that yet is because my computer had some issues, which I'm going to now solve. So that is a good thing. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you all for being imagination connoisseurs, and I very much appreciate your ongoing support. And, whatever we're going to do for this channel, we're going to make it great. I look forward to 2021. A lot of great stuff coming down the pike. Guess what starts tomorrow? Boom, 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 boom. I don't know what that song was. The Expanse Season 5. First 3 episodes drop, and unlike the other seasons, we're going to get one a week, which I actually prefer. I mean, I like having now that Mando mornings there's one more Mando morning, I get The Expanse. Very excited about that. So there you go. Don't forget, Expanse season, is it 4 or 5? No, it's season 5 because the final season is 6. So The Expanse season 5 starts tomorrow, the 16th, which I think maybe it's midnight tonight. Might have to stay up. Anyway, I want to thank you all for being here. I will be back tomorrow on the John Campea Show, and I will be back on this show as well. But tomorrow, fully articulated, watch grown men play with toys. I mean, and not in the way you probably want either. It's interesting. I had to ask, is this video made for children? I'm like, oh, no, it's probably not. Oh, well, what are you going to do? So I'll hopefully see you all day tomorrow. It should be a lot of fun. And thanks for joining me for this, the 2nd anniversary episode of Robservations, the show about something. And yes, I will get to your letters if I haven't yet. I have so many to read, I'm embarrassed. But that's good for, apparently you guys are all writing in, so thanks for that. So with that, I say remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I bring an end to Robservations, episode number, I can't believe it, 576. Thanks for being here, and as always, have a better day.